在20世纪中期，哲学已经进入一个死胡同。在现代科学的突飞猛进面前，哲学家已经被大大的边缘化。实际上，20世纪的哲学家们普遍认为，哲学关于上帝已经没有什么可言之物了。然而，在70年代，一位青年哲学家用改革宗认识论与分析哲学翻转了整个局面，他就是阿尔文·普兰丁格。
Well, philosophy is, I think, totally natural to human beings. People, just by when they're growing up, they just start asking these kinds of questions, philosophical questions, what the world is really like, and questions about God and so on, and the nature of human beings. So, first of all, philosophy is very natural to us human beings. And secondly, there's no reason it isn't fun. I mean, it's fun to think about these things. I think you don't have to take it too seriously. Well, you take it seriously, but not too seriously. And you should just enjoy philosophy. It's got lots of wonderful things to think about, and it's a lot of fun to think about them.
作为加尔文大学的哲学教授，普兰丁格既秉持基督徒的信仰立场，同时也与哲学学术圈内的同行一样，开展学术研究。
I've thought a lot about objections people raise to Christian belief, so I spent a lot of my career answering these objections and thinking about them. For example, the problem of evil, if God is perfectly good, why does he allow all this evil in our world, terrible things that happen and so on? That's the sort of thing I've been thinking about over all these years.
在流行的观念中，信仰和哲学理性是不兼容的，而普兰丁格的贡献之一，就像长久抱有这种偏见的哲学家，用分析和逻辑语言证明了哲学和信仰之间并不矛盾。好的哲学能够为信仰辩护，信仰也需要哲学更深地去理解。
As a Christian philosopher, I just do philosophy from a Christian point of view. I answer philosophical questions from a particular point of view. I don't think there is any such thing as philosophy in the abstract. I think philosophy is always from some point of view. And secular philosophers come of various kinds. I mean, there are Marxist philosophers, for example, and other kinds of secular philosophers, and they have their own point of view. So I guess the main distinction is really with respect to the starting points. Mine is Christian, theirs is something very different.
普兰丁格因他在哲学认识论和形而上学以及宗教哲学方面的贡献，在2012年获得雷谢尔奖，在2017年获得邓普顿奖。哲学家克雷格称普兰丁格为当今在世的最伟大的基督徒哲学家。
The Freud-Marx complaint. Well, Freud and Marx both were opposed to Christianity. They were both anti-Christians. Marx was a materialist. He thought there's nothing in the world but matter, and of course no such thing as God. And Freud wasn't exactly a materialist, but he too objected to the whole idea of there being such a person as God. I think in Freud's case he objected partly because it impinges on human autonomy. If there is this vast being, God, who created us and so on, and whom we owe worship and obedience, then we aren't the top dog in the universe, as we might be otherwise. I think that was part of Freud's problem. You say, what is my response to them? Well, I think they're mistaken. I mean, I think there really is such a person as God, and I don't think their objections amount to anything. In particular, the objection that otherwise, if there is such a person as God, then we human beings can't be top dog in the universe. That's true, but I don't see why that's an objection. Why do we have to be top dog in the universe? That seems to me a very silly objection to say, well, I don't think there's any such person as God, because if there were, I wouldn't be top dog in the universe. Well, okay, so you're not top dog. That's okay.
在世界范围内，他1974年用分析哲学逻辑和缜密的论证表明，至伟大者真实存在。 且必然存在于一切世界中。
Kant seemed to think that there is this thing, reason, which teaches us various things, and it's really quite elaborate. The Critique of Pure Reason is a really large, impressive book and so on. But I don't know that I don't see that there is any conflict between faith and reason. Reason doesn't teach us any such thing as that there's no such person as God or anything like that. That's no deliverance of reason. Where this conflict between faith and reason is supposed to arise, that's not very clear to me. You might say, well, they're different sources. I mean, reason is from a power, sort of part of our very human nature. We've got this power of thinking and the like, and faith is something else that comes later and is a special gift. Okay, that's a difference, but it's not an opposition. As far as I can make out, there isn't any real opposition.
普兰丁格在分析哲学的另外一项贡献是提出阿奎那加尔文认识论模型，表明人内心对神圣与永恒之物的存在与认识，从认识论角度完全合理，因此有神论的信仰是有保证的。
The Reformation sort of arose about this dispute between Catholics and within the Catholic Church, and then we wound up with the Reformation. But Aquinas and Calvin, for the most part, say the same sort of thing. There's not a lot of difference that I can see between Aquinas and Calvin. Aquinas was much more systematic, and he wrote large books, and he talked about many different topics, which Calvin didn't talk about. But when they talk about the same topics, there's not really a dime's worth of difference between them. So I'm not sure exactly how. I mean, the Reformation then must have been about something else, not really about the difference between Aquinas and Calvin, or between Aquinas and Calvin. It must have come from some other source. And of course, we know that it did.
对一般人而言，哲学和神学都是比较摸不着边际的学问，要问及它们之间的界限，那就更难以理解了。普兰丁格以基督徒哲学家的立场，常常在各种学术场合与美国公知们辩论各种重大话题。
Well, I don't think there is any very close boundary. I mean, it's hard to say where theology stops and philosophy begins, or vice versa. And I don't think it's important either that there be much of a boundary. I mean, it's pretty clear some things are philosophy and not theology. Lots of questions philosophers talk about, the problem of universals, for example. That's not theology. But then other things philosophers talk about, especially Christian philosophers, could just as well be talked about in theology. So I'd say the boundary is very fluid and shifting and isn't very important either. I can't really remember any particular debates, and that's partly because I have a very poor memory. And the older I get, the poorer it gets. I still remember the name of my wife, Kathleen, but I don't know how long that's going to last. But I don't remember any particular occasions like that. I have given lots of lectures in secular universities and in such contexts, and there always are a lot of questions afterwards. I always really enjoyed those question periods. I never sort of found myself stumped or sort of not know what to say next. And I found the sort of give and take and argument, I found that kind of enjoyable and kind of, I don't know what the right word would be, energizing, I guess. Yeah. There aren't as many actual debates as you might expect. Secular philosophers tend to associate with other secular philosophers. Maybe the same is true of Christian philosophers. They tend to associate with other Christian philosophers. So there aren't a lot of occasions when there are sort of anything like full-dress debates between secular and Christian philosophers. There probably should be, but there aren't. I have always enjoyed debating. There was a time when Christian philosophers didn't want sort of in public to act like Christian philosophers, sort of standing back from it and trying to do philosophy in the same way as other people were doing it. But I never thought that was the right way to do things. I mean, many of these Christian philosophers were in situations where they were a lone voice and felt sort of intimidated and the like of that. I was never in that kind of situation. I was at Calvin and at Notre Dame in the context of a Christian institution with lots of Christian students and Christian faculty members around. So I don't take any credit for being especially brave. I wasn't in a situation that required bravery, but I did talk in a very forthright manner about Christian belief and Christian philosophy, and I think lots of young Christian philosophers do that now. Well, I mean, my favorite passage is probably, you might think it's sort of not very original, but I think it's a great passage. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that those who believed on him should be saved. That's the summary of the Christian religion, and for that reason, I think it's a wonderful verse.
普兰丁格认为，许多人的人生、家庭、婚姻会因为他们认识神而改变。人人都有这个转向神、向美好的人生回头的机会，但是人们常常抱怨没有机会，且从不迈出选择的步伐。
Well, I'd like to be remembered as a good Christian and a good husband and a good father. We can ask my wife about the good husband part.
I think so. I think he did well in all those areas, yeah. He does dishes, yeah. He paid the bills. No, he just did ordinary things around the house. When our children were very small, he helped with them. He was obsessed with mountain climbing. From the very first year that I knew him, he came out west with my parents and me and saw the mountains for the first time. And he was in love with the mountains ever since. And he climbed a lot of the main mountains in several different countries. And that was kind of an obsession with him until he kind of outgrew his mountain climbing ability. And the last time he tried it, doing some hiking in the Grand Tetons, he said, I guess I can't do this anymore. But that was one of his very main interests, rock climbing and mountain climbing, yeah. Well, one thing, I heard your interview earlier with him, and I would like to add a bit to that. I went to many of his lectures, and I always look forward to the question and answer period. And somebody would ask a question, and sometimes it wasn't very clear, and he would rearrange the question so that it really made sense, and then he would answer it. And like he said, he never got stumped. He always had a good answer, and so that was always my favorite part of the lecture, is the question period. It has grown a bit, but I'll have to admit that sometimes I heard the same lecture 4 or 5 times, and I would hope that each time I understood it a little better. I'll admit that at first, early in our marriage, I worried about that because I did not consider myself an intellectual, and he obviously was from the very first time I met him. But it didn't seem to matter to him, and he made that very clear, and it was never a problem. We found things in common, like our 4 children, and we're very proud of our 4 children. That, I think, was the greatest thing we did together, was raise those 4 children.
I don't think there is any such thing as philosophy in the abstract. I think philosophy is always from some point of view. The main distinction is really with respect to the starting points. Mine is Christian, theirs is something very different.